Hey there, welcome to Extra Healthyish, the big sister podcast to Healthyish, and both of these podcasts are from Body+Soul. I am your host, Felicity Harley. Question, are you feeling overwhelmed? You know when you're feeling overwhelmed and sometimes you wonder whether you are actually overwhelmed or you're just busy. How do you tell the difference? And how, when you're in the chaos of the moment, do you create calm? Well, today you're going to find out. Our guest today is Nikki Fogden-Moore. She's a global coach and podcast host and author of Radical Self-Belief. Now, she believes confidence, connection, and contribution will help stop overwhelm and put you right back in the driver's seat in your life. And she's going to share some tips on how to do just that. And once you're back in that seat, how not to slide down that slippery slope again and live in a state of overwhelm. Anyway, Nikki can fill us in. Nikki, thank you so much for coming on Extra Healthyish. Now, what is the one thing that you do in your life to stay extra healthy-ish?
I just think after all these years, I know myself really well. So I have this set of vital ingredients. Some of that may include champagne, but it's knowing, it's not may, actually does, but it's knowing what your operating system best needs and understanding yourself in a way that creates this unique formula that any given moment, location, whatever, you know what you need to do to press reset. And it's having a connection on a cellular level to feel, as soon as you feel out of alignment, you're like, oh, I maybe just need to pause for a second. So you don't ignore the signs. I've got little things like walking Roxy, around the neighborhood, always being connected to nature, drinking plenty of water, binge watching Netflix so that my brain switches off, calling my mum on video. There's certain things that give us endorphins and serotonin, and they're not usually created from other places. They're actually created when we sit with ourselves, and that kind of fills our vitality bank up again and reduces overwhelm.
I know, it's funny, isn't it? I just have to share this little moment I had this morning. I mean, I went for a big long run yesterday and I felt really up vibe this morning. And I actually thought to myself, running is it. Like, running is my meditation. And I love those little moments where you think, oh, that is what does it for me. It might not do it for anyone else, but it does it for me. Now, let's talk about overwhelm. What are the key signs you are overwhelmed?
Well, I would say there's 7 key signs straight off the bat. You're not sleeping well. You're anxious and not making good decisions. You're flip-flopping. You don't trust yourself anymore. You feel that you need coffee, stimulants, alcohol, legal, illegal drugs, whatever it is. You're actually worried all the time and anxious. You see that your health isn't regular, which means your energy levels are not consistent. And ultimately, it's this freak out, burnout, opt out. So you start to get to the point where you actually can't function properly and you're making poor decisions, and there's certain things you just don't want to look at. So you use the avoidance tactic rather than go, I just don't even want to look at that now. So usually when people are in overwhelm, they're really not in great decision-making places. They're not in conscious decision-making places, and they've got into a state of what I call autopilot, which is just going through the motions. And that's a really dangerous place to sit. That's where most accidents occur, most financial mistakes occur, and we become further and further away from our internal operating system, which has all the answers too.
So how do we get more in tune with that operating system? I mean, I love that, how you use that kind of language, because I think it's really important for us. How can we, I suppose, sit with it, work out what we want and need?
I think, first of all, we have to uncomplicate this whole story. If you want to talk neuroscience, it's called reframing. So we've grown up with a hard drive that is our programming that might not serve us anymore. So the first thing is that awareness to say, we spoke about on the mini podcast, my thought Tinder analogy. What are you swiping left and what are you going to choose to swipe right on? So you can acknowledge something, but you don't have to pick that bag up from the carousel. So the first step is awareness to what conversations you're having with yourself and what stories we sit in, because ultimately we're in a society that's addicted to suffering. That's why Eckhart Tolle talks about the pain body and Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about neuroplasticity, because we need to retrain as individuals that we're actually smarter, more capable, more agile, and quite empowered as we are, but we've lost that sense of connection. So the first thing is you want to be willing to say, maybe what I was doing before isn't going to work in the future. Because without the willingness to press pause and look at it, you can't create any kind of change. You'll just keep doing the same thing. The second thing is it's an inside job. So you can't just run out of the Buddhist monastery going, woo, I'm certified, and suddenly preach to everyone else. It's actually quite private when you figure out that what you've been making decisions on and how you're feeling isn't so great anymore. And that's quite a revelation. So the first step is awareness. The second step is accountability. And then you start putting some plans in place, which is really what I call the pin drop or the pit stop. And you go into the pit lane and you go, the green, the traffic light system, what's working, what's amber, and what is just, am I allergic to and is pulling me down? So the traffic light system, whether it's people, places, things, food, whatever, gives us an ability to just do a little quick check on under the hood, and to be accountable instead of staying stuck in the story that relationship isn't working, that friendship. We project a lot because then we don't have to look at ourselves. So radical self-belief just means staying to your own lane and actually having the revelation that with neuroplasticity and neuroscience, we can become, rethink, retrain, and find our agility and be in flow in quantum time. It doesn't take 7 years or 7 weeks. It's the willingness to press pause and shut out all the white noise. I think that's the very first step.
Yeah, turn off the TV in the mornings. That might be the first step. So if you're in this if you are in a state of overwhelm, if you're not up to that, those stages yet, how do you actually put up your hand for help? Because a lot of the time we just get stuck in the cycle. We're on the treadmill. We're in it. How should we reach out and say, I actually need help?
I think that's a really good question. And first of all, be proud of yourself for recognizing you're in survival mode. Survival mode is not a great place to sit. And, we've got the majority of our population feeling out of control in the passenger seat. But a lot of them are parents and leaders and managers and, leaders in their community, and they don't want to show that they don't know the answers. So no one knows the answers. So the first step is to find someone that you trust, that is a confidant, that has zero judgment. This is very important as friends as well. As someone brings their hand up and says, I just don't feel right, I'm overwhelmed, that there's no need for you to solve it. You have to create a safe place to listen. So owning that truth is one thing, and then providing a safe place for someone to extrapolate on that is the next thing, because we tend to want to fill the gaps. Or we want to say, I don't feel right, but, because we don't want to put, we don't want to trap ourselves where suddenly we're going to be held accountable or someone's going to label us as having depression or whatever else, because there's a lot of fear around putting your hand up. If there's no one in your inner circle, I would suggest using some of the amazing services that are more available to us than ever, whether it's via sports groups or business groups or Are You OK or community programs, even a church, anywhere where there's a system where you can be heard, even online. Or even on social media. I always say on my comments, if you need to, reach out. And so anyone that says that on social media that's in a position of guidance or authority or mentorship means it. We're here to say, how can we help? And the first step is, once you put your hand up, it doesn't have to be perfect what you say next. You could just go SOS. Yes. That's enough.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know what the PG rating on the show was, because there's some other expletives as well.
The S word is fine.
Yeah, exactly. I think women are better at talking about it, but men talk side by side, and it's a big thing to admit that you've reached your limit. It's a massive thing. We have to have a lot of compassion, understanding, and space for people just to tell it like it is in their own words and not lecture them and provide an outcome, because just being seen, that in itself is a wonderful gift to give someone who's really struggling.
Yeah. Absolutely. And just to listen. I think just listen to them. You don't have to necessarily offer advice. Leave that up to, the experts, but you can just listen to someone. Now, your book talks obviously about the steps to overcoming the overwhelm after you've put your hand up or recognise that you're in this state. What do you think is one of the most important steps in there that you write about? And can you share a bit about these steps with us?
Do you want me to be brutally honest?
Yes.
In all my coaching, I say to people, if you're not prepared to show up for yourself, nothing's going to change. I think it's the ability to put your oxygen mask on first, to rewire the martyrdom of, oh, but I always help others. And that's just deflection from the fact that we haven't really looked at owning our own side of the street. So when you become, radically accountable, radically leading from within, and put your oxygen mask on first, you are so much more capable, grounded, agile, and discerning about where you spend your time and what you spend your time on. So the very first piece of advice, in fact, after you've had what I call the Nikiphany, oh shit, this is really worse, you go, well, I need to put my hand up and go, what's the next right thing I can do for myself? And we've got to stop being a society of rescuers and go, first of all, before I sort of project out onto anyone else, what maybe I've got to take care of my own side of the street, because if my oxygen mask is on first, I can then be there for my children. I can explain and educate and lead by example instead of lecturing and deflecting. It's a very valuable tool. It's liberating, it's empowering. And when you stand in that truth, all your relationships around you change as well. I can't describe it. It is absolutely game changing.
We'll be back after this short break with more from Nikki. Now, you also write in your book about your mate called Bob. Tell us about Bob and the role he plays when you're feeling overwhelmed.
Well, I think so cool that you picked up on that in the book, Felicity. Thank you so much. We talk about ego and self, and often, now, if you haven't already read the books, Michael Singer's Untitled Soul, Eckhart Tolle, The New Earth, it talks about our ability to understand where we've come from and our subconscious versus our superconscious and self. So Bob is usually the person on the TV remote, changing the channel all the time, talking a million times, judging everything, questioning everything, the over communicator in your head. That's usually your ego, because that is the false sense of safe security. That is keeping you safe. That is restricting you from the possibility by talking about all the reasons why you might want to avoid pain. So Bob sits there in the background doing push-ups. And when you have a weak moment, he comes out and says, well, I told you so.
I bet he's got great muscles.
Yeah, great muscles. So I always say to my clients, name your ego, because it's a part of who you are. And ego isn't just something that we use in society to talk about vanity. Ego is edging God out or edging our consciousness out. It's not about a religion, it's about self, which we spoke about before. So when you understand, there is no way you'll ever get rid of your Bob, because he's a part of who you are. So being able to recognize him and go, I've got it from here, Bob, and not continue with the conversation. It's the same thing as the American Indian analogy of the black wolf and the white wolf. Which wolf do you want to feed? So we just don't realize it until we become into the awareness phase that we've been feeding our subconscious and making decisions from subconscious to avoid pain or failure or whatever else. So we have to liberate ourselves from that, but also accept that programming is part of who we are. And you give it a bit of a smile and the nod, but that's about all you should do, because it doesn't define your future. And that type of powerful implementation of understanding that your ego is your self-conscious, subconscious protection means that you don't give it power, but you're allowed to say it's still there. And it will never go away. The best athletes in the world get trained on this. Marine Corps, all our fantastic military, everyone else, they get trained on how to discern the difference between ego and self to make good decisions in the spur of the moment. That high performance thinking, everyone should be grown up with. Everyone should be given those tools, because that's just about going, well, hold on a second. Is that statement true? Or is it a deflection?
Or is it a story I'm telling myself? Yeah, I actually like that, because I think giving it a name helps you kind of I don't know, put them into two compartments, like whatever, the word I'm looking for. And it helps you go, okay, Bob, stop talking, stop telling me a story. It's not true. This is what I should be, this is who I should be listening to, because innately my super sense, I think, is I read recently, is another word for awareness, is what it's really telling me.
Yes. We're into this language now of awareness, soul food, super senses, cosmic, quantum, past lives. Actually, it's quantum, right? So there's what you see as the now is what you get. See, we have the ability to create our reality, but because we come from a society where we've attached stories to so many things, if you eat your vegetables, you can have dessert. If you do this, you can do that. We have so many consequences and stories that we're given that we actually end up running our lives by them. So when you can stop the stories and listen to self, you you start attracting full alignment, the best frequency business decisions and everything else, but you also eliminate stress.
Yes.
And I'll explain why. Because Bob, or whoever your ego might be named after the show, they're the busy minds, right? People say, how do you know the difference? Well, you know the difference because one is super chatty, annoying, and it's that quiet, insidious voice that's just pecking away at you going, are you sure about that? Don't you want another Tim Tam? It's in the freezer. There's only one left, you know? And then the other voice, which is almost inaudible, it's usually a single word. It's a yes or a no. It's a feeling, and it's quieter and it's discerning, but it doesn't have as many words attached to it because it just knows. And that knowing, I think, is what we're educating on radical self-belief, on neuroplasticity, on mindfulness. That's why everyone's taught to meditate now, because then you can hear yourself.
Absolutely. You can stop all that other self-talk. Now, can you share a time in your life when you were drowning in overwhelm, and how did you get yourself out of it, and what did you learn?
I mean, I think I've had many times where I've been drowning in overwhelm, which is why I've got so much empathy and examples. But I mean, even up into putting this book out, and my father passed away a couple of months ago and I couldn't get to New Zealand. Like, I've just had so many moments that were out of my control that if I was to go down the rabbit hole of the injustice of it all and the pain and the suffering, I think I would have never been able to liberate myself and show up every day in a way that's conscious. I would have gone down fear and grief and all those things. But overwhelm can manifest itself in many ways. For me, it's just the amount of work I do. So what I do is I've actually gone old-fashioned to a whiteboard, and every day I put up on my whiteboard my magic day, and I write down what my mandatories are. And then the other stuff, I call it the crap list, all the other little things, I put those in a box. And so they're sitting there, but they're out of my head. And I go, right, when I do this, then I can get to those. And that whiteboard is not just work. It's all the things that are important to me, all the things that are in my ecosystem. So I take it from my head and I put it on a blueprint. And then you can actually see the facts and stats, because that is an exact example of taking a story, oh my God, I've got so much to do, to what do I really have to do? And then you can start, chipping away at things and be okay with the fact you're not going to get everything done. You can't be all places. And there are many people suffering at the moment. We have to find the light in the tunnel, and we have to realize that in the 1940s, when there was a war, there was no internet. We couldn't order from PE Nation and Style Runner. We couldn't get Uber Eats. And so we're connected now more than ever, but we're still unsatisfied. And that worries me as a coach. It worries me that we're not using the word replete, which is completely satiated, because we have everything at our fingertips. We just have to realize it. And
mind you, there's something glorious about writing things on a whiteboard. Long live the whiteboard. Like, it's not the phone, it's the whiteboard. Bring back the whiteboard.
Yeah, and there's a cognitive act when you write things down by hand versus in a digital device. So you're more likely to transfer that information out of your head and out of those folders onto a piece of paper or a whiteboard. Actually declutters your mental folders.
Well, there we go.
So it creates space by putting it up there.
A simple tip to overcome your overwhelm right there. Thanks, Nikki, for coming on Extra Healthyish.
Thanks so much for having me, Felicity, and I can't wait for people to get their hands on Radical Self-Belief. I'm very excited about this because it is really a toolkit. It also comes with all the worksheets and a full online program masterclass, so I'm very excited.
Well done. Congratulations. I hope this chat with Nikki, helps you figure out whether you can overcome your overstuffed, overwhelmed life right now. And hopefully it has created some great ideas for you to implement in your life to create that calm. Oh, don't we all seek that lovely, peaceful, calm life? If you want more from Nikki, make sure you grab her book called Radical Self-Belief. If you want more from us at Body & Soul, download our Healthyish podcast, download other episodes of Extra Healthyish, or you can jump online, bodyandsoul.com.au, or join the conversation via Instagram or Facebook. Thanks again for listening to this chat with Nikki. And if you have a moment, we'd be so grateful if you could rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast. And until tomorrow, stay extra healthyish.